to introduce you. All right, we have 2 more sessions left for day 3. Super excited that you have chosen to be here with us today. I hope over the last 3 days you have got some engaging, useful, and practical tips and information strategies that you can take and use with your families and children. Our first speaker today is Katie Wertz. She received her BA degree from Cal State University in liberal studies. She went on to complete her multiple subject credential from Cal State San Marcos. After working in higher education as an enrollment advisor for several years, she continued to have the urge to teach again. Her passion for education and knowledge was helping foster the support of many students struggling to get help for college. So she went on to earn her MA in education and then her Master's of Business Administration from Ashford University. She has so many things and so much background. You are going to love what she has to share with us today. The second speaker is Sam Daniel. He earned his BS from Northwest Missouri State University in broadcasting with a minor in theater. Following the completion of his undergrad studies, he chose to serve in the U.S. Navy. Thank you so much for your service. And Sam discovered a passion for training and educating others, and this led him to complete an MS in Human Resource Training and Development from Amberton University. The use of his education would be placed on hold as he found himself living on an island as a military spouse to a Navy chief. He also has so much to bring to this presentation today. So Sam and Katie, the floor is yours, and we are super excited to hear what you have to share with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shipley or Tisha. I'll get used to that eventually. So here's where I want to start. This is why education is such an amazing thing. Dr. Shipley was actually one of my professors with my 3rd and final master's degree. And so she has supported me through my journey, not only as my professor, but became my colleague as well to some degree. And I hope to be that one day for Sam too, because I was his advisor and now he's going to be this amazing teacher. So it is really, truly important in education how much support we get and we grow. So we are always kind of changing and involving different aspects to our role and learning from each other. And I would love to kind of give you a little bit more of my family, my passion, my purpose, and kind of go from there. So I should start with kind of what brings us here today. I'm going to turn off my camera so you don't have to stare at my face and get distracted. So can everyone see family relationships and education and supporting families that are behind from COVID?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're ready to roll. So this is, again, a little bit about our topic today. There's a lot of unknowns and frustrations with education and finding motivations to help serve in education. No matter if you're admin, you're a teacher, you're a parent, or even you're a student, at this point, we have all found some struggles with COVID and learning. And honestly, our support system, because a lot of parents had to not only take on the role of working from home, now they had to help be a support system for education as well. So families and schools, perfect partners for student success. That is me at the school that I teach at. So this is my family tree, and I feel like it's important to know who my family is in order to kind of know me. Now, myself, you see me at the bottom, followed by my mom and my dad, who are both married. They've been together, in 3 days is their anniversary for quite a long time. And above them are my grandparents. My Mimo and Papa are above my mom, my grandma Pat, and my Papa above my dad. So who I am, obviously not just genetic wise, comes from all these amazing people, but my passion for education, my drive for success, my ambition, everything that I have, I sincerely owe to each and every one of these people for different reasons. And then in each of these corners is my little brother Patrick to the left and my little brother Matthew to the right. So my family tree, every one of the people above me have fostered my passion and purpose for education and were my role models. So then by that, I always felt the need to be on top of everything I did because my little brothers were watching me as well. My Mima was a real estate agent. She went to school to be a nurse. My Papa was Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force, retired several times and ended his career as a train conductor at Six Flags. I don't think he ever was going to really retire. My grandma Pat was a hard worker and put my Papa through school, and my Papa became an educator himself. Now, these are all the people in my family. Every one of our families are very different. And as the speaker said before, we all come from a diverse, different background. Your support system can be your parents, it can be your teachers, it could be your friends, it could be your neighbors. And I am truly blessed that every person in my family, whether they had a formal education or not, they always encouraged my love and passion for learning, teaching. Just a really quick overview. The top picture to the left is my great-grandmother, my two grandparents, my mom, my uncle, and my brothers. To the right is my grandfather's military pilot picture. To the right of that is my family reunion on my dad's side of the family, and in the middle is my great-grandparents. To the right of that is my great-grandfather and I at church together. To the right of that would be my Uncle Don, who was amazing professor, my papa, who was a teacher, my Aunt Shirley, my Aunt Glennie, and my great-great-grandmother, Massengale. And then to finish it up, my grandfather at the bottom left, my papa, my Meemaw side of the family, the last middle two pictures, and then my great-grandfather, Papa Cone, to the right. So the reason I show all these to you is because every one of these people, whether again educated or not, encouraged every one of the family members to be the best version of themselves, whether that meant to get a formal education, work hard, join the military, whatever we did, from cleaning toilets all the way up to teaching college, we needed to be the best that we could be. So I was very blessed, but it's important for us to know that we all come from different families, and it's not where we come from, but it's where we're going that truly matters. So I would love this to be an interactive thing. If anybody ever has any questions or any of the slides, I would love to kind of get an interactive, engaged session from you. So what I want to talk about is our frustrations. Where is the motivation? Teaching during and after a pandemic, people are burnt out, and Sam will kind of talk about a student-teacher perspective a little bit later on. So one thing I want to say is all families are different. And one thing that I've learned that humbled me as a professor is to stop saying parents. Not everyone has parents. Not everyone has two parents. I remember in school, I was really upset my parents weren't divorced because everyone's parents were divorced, and I thought something was wrong with me that my parents were married. So that was just to give you a little interpretation of how I viewed families. And it was later on, after talking to my dad, that I realized every family is a bit different, but I like to use the term guardian and family because sometimes there's parents that are separated. Sometimes grandparents are raising kids, sometimes siblings. We have foster youth, but all families are different, and all families have something beautiful from them. So what I want everyone to understand is it takes three. It is the teacher, the guardians, and the students. We are all here to foster, or should be to foster, the love and passion for education. So I know I started this session with why my strong families have helped me. Now, at the end of the day, I still had to go to school and earn my master's degrees and go through that session, but it was never a question in my mind that I was going to go to school. I was never forced. I never thought I had to, but there was never an alternative in my mind other than college. So in my opinion, strong families, and after my research in education, are important is they give children a safe, secure place to be themselves. Learn about who they are, and kids will feel secure and loved, so they have confidence to learn. Because nothing is more heartbreaking, as we all know as teachers, is students that come in tired, or they had a bad family incident, or they had a bad night of sleep, or they have hunger pains. They can't even focus on learning if they don't even have a safe and secure place to put their head at night. So we want kids to be free to explore and try new things. We want them to feel secure. We want to help enhance their self-esteem, because right now what I think is going on a lot in society is kids are trying to find where they fit in, and that has been happening for generations. But enhance their self-esteem, push them to their full potential. Don't compare them to their siblings, their neighbors, their cousins, and allow them to see future past high school graduation. Now, when I say push them to their full potential, my great-grandfather on my dad's side of the family would always ask my dad every time he had a test, did you earn 100? Not because he wanted my dad to get a perfect score, but because my great-grandfather, Sam, always wanted him to do his best. Now, my father is probably the most intelligent, gifted person that I've ever met, hardworking, driven, humble. I could not say enough wonderful things about my father, but his ability to earn 100 would have been a lot easier than some of his cousins. But my grandfather, great-grandfather, would say to all of them, did you earn 100 on your test? He didn't mean, did you get 100%, but did you give yourself 100% of an opportunity to try? So that's something I want to leave you with, a little message is Don't try to compare the kids to anybody else, whether they be your students or your children. Just make sure they're doing the best that they can do. So what happened with COVID? Of course, we wore masks, we went home, there was online learning, but there was more than just the school closures. The closures hurt all of us. Students are failing further behind. Students were missing out on school. Students missed critical milestones. They missed dances, football games, scholarship opportunities, socialization. COVID harmed students' social, emotional well-being, and their health. I know we were very worried about their health, but it was so much more than just, did they get COVID? Are we keeping them safe from COVID? So as an educator, parent, or anybody that's on this chat, what was your biggest takeaway from the COVID learning experience that you thought was a little bit of a disruption to the learning? Feel free to comment below. I'd love to see what you thought was for your school or children. Yes, thank you, Dr. Shipley. The research, there's so much research on this, and you guys, the research is not even done yet. We haven't even barely hit the surface, because now we're finally spending the year going back in the classroom. And I know that when I was working with my student teachers last year, one of my student teachers, master's teacher, missed, I believe it's 50 days of learning. Well, that's 50 days of learning that his students had to have substitute teachers. He had to do extra work. The kids did not get the fundamental teaching from him, so it hurt everyone. So the crisis for students with special needs especially, and as Dr. Shipley said, there's a lot of research on this, but the kids did not get the extra support, the program, they did not have the aides at school, they did not have the aides at home. Then there's a lot of parents that had to work from home or go in the office. We had to worry about childcare and different opportunities. Alicia, the children weren't getting the participation in lessons they would normally get. Absolutely. It was more of like an online learning experience where more is like you learn as you go, which is fine for us. I mean, my online school systems, I was very independent learner. I could do my work and get it done, but there was a lot of people that weren't getting schoolwork done. The parents didn't know where to upload it. The kids were missing out. The very basic skills were lost in preschool, Judy. Absolutely. Sharing, working together, working through conflict. Kim, your youngest daughter ages went through a pandemic, mental health. Great. Yes, the socialization aspect academically is what we really are striving for as teachers. We want the kids to get good grades, but how many other social activities, just being with their friends, saying hello, interacting, having that one-on-one attention with their teacher, they missed out. Kids learn through play and interaction, and they missed it. Absolutely. It's not just academically that we missed out on. Depression was a huge issue. I had a friend who she wouldn't let her kids go out and play with the neighbors, so they would see each other outside and they'd wave, and it was heartbreaking because her daughter has asthma, so she wanted to keep her safe. But the depression issue, and we could go on for days, but thank you so much for the participation on that. It truly, it was a crisis for sure, and not just academically. So what I'm seeing with the self-motivated versus lack of motivation, as someone said in the chat bar earlier, those who were self-motivated, they were doing okay. Maybe not as well as they would have done in person. Some of them did better, but the lack of motivation became real as parents were not holding their kids accountable, and some of them didn't understand how to do the work. Some of them didn't know how to do online learning or where the tools were. I work as a professor both in person and online, and I've gone to school online. So I've been a tool and advocate for many of my friends during this period of time. Depression, Kim said issues before, now so much before, need excellent, yes, for young children. This is amazing. Thank you, you guys, thank you so much for being so interactive. So aside from the self-motivated versus lack of motivation, for any of those who work as teachers, we know that when COVID stopped and we went online, whatever the grade was at the school, in California, this is how we had it, the kids' grades could not go lower, but they could get better. So if a child didn't do any work at home for a short period of time, they were still able to pass the class. Well, not only is this academically not great for them, but this is allowing them excuses. This is allowing them to use what I call the COVID excuse, or not being an active participant in their life. We are not allowing them their full potential. We're allowing cop-outs. Grades could not drop without being punished. We are not holding them accountable. Some parents didn't know how to help, but some parents, they couldn't help. That's another thing. The parents don't understand the education. When I was growing up, there was certain subject matters that my mom she would sit with us to do our homework, and she was such a great mom, but she did not understand the content, which is something I will circle back around later. So we had to wait till after my dad got home, working his 50, 60 hours a week, sitting down to do homework with us, because even though she tried, sometimes she couldn't do it. So many of you spoke about this. Social isolation was a common stressor during the pandemic. Kids of all ages need to have social, emotional well-being. While at school, students learn academically, but also socially, emotionally, and physical. Their needs are being met. They became confused, scared, loss of friends, family loss, arguments over politics and masks and no masks. They missed important milestone events, graduation, their last football game, homecoming. We have no idea what the long-term damage is going to be about. They're behind in school academically, but what about all the milestones and activities they missed as well? They had no support for future college scholarships. Their grades were sinking. The opportunity for them to sit with a counselor and figure out what they were going to do long-term, it's now gone. So we have to think about what was out of my control versus what was in my control. We have to think about this as students all the way up to adults. So what was out of my control versus what was in my control during COVID? What was in their control was their thoughts and their actions, how they spoke to themselves, if they did their work, their boundaries, the goals that they set, and what they gave their energy to. Out of their control, where they were learning, what support systems they may have had, and other factors. So I like to think of the in my control versus out of my control mindset, even for myself as an adult. Somebody just commented, I live in San Antonio, a very diverse city, and we had parents that said I cannot help with classwork because of some language barriers. This is a huge point that I'm going to get to later. There are so many parents that speak different languages, and we need to make sure the support systems are there throughout. So if you don't speak a language that a parent speaks, for example, are you getting interpreters? Are you having apps that can basically interpret what you're saying to their language? Some parents actively want to help, but there's things that are stopping them from being able to help. So did we ever get back on track? The truth is, it depends. I would say not fully. We are now going through what I call the great catch-up. Schools need to attack lost learning and reset. So we need to think of the long-term damages. There's teacher shortage. When I became a teacher, substitute teachers in California had to have a bachelor's degree, a teaching credential, or be in the credential program. Right now, depending on the schools and their needs during COVID, we have such a teacher shortage in different areas that they're letting a lot of the parameters slide. Students are actively not caring, whether they're not caring because they just lost the ability to, or their support system, but they are not actively engaged in their learning, and their grades are dropping. So there's not that pride in getting an A anymore. To them, C's get degrees, or who cares if I pass? No one's going to hold me accountable. Absolutely, Alicia, that's exactly my point. In some places, you only need a high school diploma. Some states, you don't even need a diploma to be a substitute teacher. It's so different across the board. Students are behind, parents are frustrated. Now, this is not about any of the parents that are frustrated. It's the ones that are not present. And I know there's a great mix of people in this group. Many of you are wonderful parents. So you being here, you are not the parent we're talking about. It's okay to be frustrated. It's the parents that are not present that we're having a hard time with. In Texas also, yeah, every state's a bit different. So needs are not being met for the teachers, the admins, the parents, the students. So what I think we need to do with resetting education and reshape education, go ahead and comment in the chat. How many of you guys hear the saying, we're behind in education, we're behind in education, we're behind in education? Have you been hearing this a lot? Yeah, every single day. Here's the food for thought. Maybe we're not behind in education. Maybe for the last 10, 15, 20 years, we were pushing the kids so far advanced, maybe they're exactly where they needed to be academically. Now, just an idea. I know that's not the case for everyone, but we have to reset and go back to the fundamentals. There's a great opportunity here to reimagine what schools and learning can look like in the future. The pandemic shed light on critical nature of our education systems. and our necessity to safeguard education for the future. We need collective engagement and mutual accountability. This means the kids need to dig in deep, grab the boots by the bootstraps and pull them up. Parents need to be just there to support and help. And teachers, we have to all work together for critical cornerstones of continued success. So we must preserve our safety and hold each other and every student accountable in their learning. Go ahead and add in the chat box, why do you think every student should be a part of their learning environment? Why is it a need for the kids to be accountable for their learning environment? Yes, they need to learn independence because it should be, yes, thank you, Dr. Shipley. Every student, whether they go on to college, whether they go into the workforce, whether they go into the military, they go into a trade, whatever they do, they're going to need to do it themselves. They need to be independent and be able to identify what they need exactly. They have to learn. They need to see themselves as a stakeholder in their own future. Exactly. Now, I come from a family that's not well off, but we were always okay. The first time I realized that we may not be as rich as I thought, we were at church and we were leaving church, and I wanted to go to lunch with my aunts that were in the pictures and my cousins. And my dad said, we don't have money right now for that. And I thought, what? I told him to go to that machine where you take out money and just go get the money for lunch. We need to go to the family for lunch. I did not realize that we did not have a lot, but we never struggled. And so ultimately the responsibility, I never needed or wanted for anything, but I've worked hard and had a job ever since I was able to work. I was in control of my own abilities, my own learning. And life is not always fair, but you have to make the most of your situation. And I'll leave this part with this quote to the next slide. My dad always tells me that we're all in the same ocean, we're just in different boats. So never look over to someone else's boats or look at someone else's struggle. We're all different, but we're all here to support. Thanks, Sam. So again, the pandemic shed light on our critical nature of our education system. We need collective engagement. That is what I want you guys to leave this with, collective engagement. We must preserve our safety and hold each student accountable to their learning. Student, if you get an F, even if your parents don't care, take pride in your education because this is to set you on your path to a journey for your future. Now, if I ever came home with an F, let's tell you right now that wouldn't have flown in my family. But not every student has a parent, a guardian, or a support system that cares. So we need them to buy into their own education because they are responsible for their future. Now, this is a different lesson than we teach maybe in high school, middle school, junior high than we would in preschool, but it needs to start young. It starts with each and every one of us, with our children, our students at a very young age, to not make excuses and hold themselves accountable for what they can do and not do. Many teachers and families change the focus from remediation to acceleration. Now we call this accelerated learning. With remediation, the goal is to make up what the child missed first time around or where they're at. Students may never catch up. So back to the fundamentals, everyone. We might not ever catch up. But what we can help with fundamentals, are we a good person? Our morals, our values, are we hardworking? Are we putting an effort in our own responsibility and holding what our own control is? Thank you so much, Judy. We're responsible for our own learning. Now with remediation, the goal again is to make up the work, but let's think about the catch up and go back to the foundations. Accelerated learning, by contrast, everyone, seeks to make grade level assignments more reachable to those who are behind from COVID through a combination of intensive help and modifications. We need to modify the work, get to the main points, get to the fundamentals, and get to the basics. Instead of segregating these children and trying to give them what they didn't learn, we need to go back to the basics on what is essential that the student knows in order to stay with their classmates and peers. We are already so far behind, and someone said it earlier, we are self-esteem issues and depression issues, and nothing is going to make this worse than making a kid feel like they're so far behind. Now, we have so many different ways to support students. So get them involved at school now that we're back. Encourage parents to take advantage of community resources. Start a teach study hall during an after-school program. Have students identify resources within their family. Nothing is more beneficial than having an amazing family like mine, cousins, neighbors, grandparents, great-grandparents, great aunts and uncles, everyone that is there as a resource. There are so many people in our community that we can use as resources. Incorporate it into a project-based learning. Acts as a normal thing. I want it to be important that you all know strong villages of support is what is so important for a child's learning and socialization. So we always hear nature versus nurture. Think about how they're influenced by their family since the family brought them into the world. A child's development happens physically, emotionally, socially, and intellectually during this time. And as a teacher, we need to foster this and create tools to help it if it's not there, because not every parent or family or guardian is going to be great. I hate to say it. I wish I could bring all these kids into my house and give them love and support. And that's what we do as teachers. And that was lost during COVID. A child who feels loved, safe, and respected will always do more than expected. You ever hear that saying at work, you're going to work better for a good leader than someone who doesn't care? Thank you, Patricia. Absolutely. It takes a village to support children to be loved and respected. But if you don't feel love and respect in your own home, it is hard to feel love and respect for yourself. So us as educators, we need to make sure that they know they are worthy. They are safe. They are loved. And this goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Where are the parents in the learning? Some of them are really trying to be there, but they're basically just barely getting by. They're eating, they're sleeping, their safety, their love, belonging, esteem, self-actualization. If your basic needs are not being met and you're not fed and you don't have a safe environment, how can we expect them to feel good about themselves? It is important for us to shed light on what has happened during COVID and let them know they are worthy and loved. So I'm going to go through some of these slides quickly so we can get to Sam, because I know you're all going to want to hear what he has to say. But society is changing and it's faster paced. Parents are tired. Amen. Parents are tired. So many of my friends, my family, they're tired. They're working several jobs. They're burning out with their own responsibilities. And now we're asking them to do their kids' homework, make sure their kids are uploading activities, making sure their kids are motivated. Now they are the parents, but there are so many different things they have going on themselves. Parents may not understand the work. Feel free to chat. Did any of you ever have work as a parent where you're just like, can someone please tutor me? Can someone explain the concept? Can someone please show me an activity of what we're doing here? Because it's okay to not understand the work. I have 3 master's degrees and some of my friends, their kids' 3rd or 4th grade math. I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. This is different math. Let me go back to the basics. Some parents are okay with their kids not showing up. Absolutely. This is a challenging time. Absolutely. And you guys, some of the parents are okay. My parents would never be okay with me not showing up. My parents held me accountable, but how as educators do we hold a kid accountable when his parents or her parents don't? How do we help? We cannot always change the dynamic at home, but we can try and foster and motivate our students, even when their home life may not be able to. We need to lift our kids up, support the kids, and tell them college, trade schools, military, other options after high school are important. Hear me on that. Trade schools right now are limited on people in the professions. Some of them can make more money doing that. Exactly, Nancy. Homework is sent home with no books or guidance on how to do the homework. Absolutely. And we'll cover that in a few minutes too. So support the kids with where they're at. It is not a one size fits all. Telling them that they matter wherever they come from and not compare themselves to others. They can be anything they want to be and they can strive for more than society tells them they're going to be. So many kids come from different families and some of them are told they are not going to be this or that because of where they come from. How damaging. How damaging to feel like you are no worthy of success just because of where you come from. I see a couple other things. Parents are sometimes battling their own, yes, unemployment, absolutely, or they're working 3 jobs. Parents are sometimes, let's say, unemployment, healthcare. Parents were getting sick with COVID. And then homework, again, guidance, let's show them tools. Let's go over it. Let's have a Zoom meeting where the teacher has some time. We have enough on our plates, but as a teacher, if someone asks me to sit through and give a synopsis of what we're doing, that's okay with me. I'll go and give you a Zoom lesson on what we're doing. And Sam put, when I was in real estate, our need for more trades, exactly. Trades are open. Deborah, your daughter is older, but also appreciate that homework was done. as an extension of class? Absolutely. That was so much help for parents. So then you can love on your kids when they get home and take them to sports and other activities. Absolutely. So student teaching experiences and struggles. Sam is going to kind of tell you his experience in a few minutes. So how to support future teachers, pandemic student teaching was rough. For me as an advisor, it was terrible. I had so many student teachers that decided maybe teaching wasn't for them. Kids that came back from online learning were not prepared. The basic concept of just behaving and listening when they didn't have to do it at home was a struggle. Now, next up, we have Sam.
Oh, there I am. Thank you. Hey, thanks, Katie. Would you put the picture back up? Because I'd rather not just be on video. Thank you. All right, everybody. I am Sam Daniel. And as Katie said, I was one of her student teachers. She was my advisor for my student teaching. And so obviously I am not the most experienced person in the room. But I'm here today to talk about my experiences in student teaching, because I was at multiple schools in multiple states student teaching over the past few months. To begin with, I'll start off with my very first days, my very first moments walking into the high school that I started student teaching at. I walked into the front office and I was greeted by two women at the front desk. I said, "Hi, I'm a new student teacher. I'm working for Coach so-and-so, and I don't know where to go." And they said, "Oh, well, we didn't know she was going to be out today. So we're going to have you go over to admissions, and they should be able to set you up there." I said, "Okay." And then I walked over to admissions and I said, "Hi, same thing. I'm a new student teacher working for Coach, so-and-so, and I'm just trying to figure out where to go." She said, "Oh, well, she's not going to be here today. She should have a sub though. Here's a list of your roll sheets for the students in your class." And then as I walked out of the administration office, I thought to myself, what was totally wrong there? First, nobody asked me my name. Nobody asked me for identification. And nobody had any idea where their teacher was. Oh, we didn't realize she was going to be gone today. With what just happened in Texas, the tragic event, how are the schools earning the trust of the parents by not taking care of the students? I could have been anybody walking into that school. So I think it is very crucial that we have communication between the parents and the schools, but it's a two-way street. We can't ask the parents to be working so hard if we're not taking care of their kids and earning their trust as well. So when I was at this high school, I was working in PE. I'm now I finished my student teaching in junior high and high school PE. And for the first 11 days, my master teacher was there one day. And for several of the days, I had no substitute. I was pretty much the teacher subbing, not getting paid, not seeing my work. And I felt like I had no support. I hadn't even met the principal of the school the entire time I was there. So I've got my lists, and when I do have a sub, they just kind of sit and let me take over. So I want to go over some of the things that I was noticing in these classes. First off, I'd have a class of about 50-ish students. 5 to 10 wouldn't show up. They would be at school. They just didn't come to class. 5 to 10 wouldn't dress out in their PE uniform. So I've got 10 to 20 kids out of 50 that are not participating in the lesson for one reason or another. And I was trying to figure out, what can we do, to what's the recourse? How can we fix this? Because there's nothing I can do like repercussion wise, except that we can dock their grades. So I go up to one of the other coaches and I said, "Yeah, so I'm finding all we can do is dock these students' grades, but they don't seem to care." And he said, "Oh no, most of them don't care because they don't plan on doing any kind of school past high school. So, they don't care if you drop their grades. And I said, but I'm not thinking about school past high school. I'm thinking about life past high school. I mean, they have to, even if they just go out and get a job, they need the fundamentals to show up for work, to be willing to learn what they're going to do, because they have to find a way to pay for their lives. So I'm not talking about these kids going to college. I'm talking about them just being members of society. And so they need to take accountability for their education just so that they can contribute. So as I was going through the first couple weeks, I also noticed that things were getting more lax as far as dress code. And I said to these other coaches, I said, well, what's going on with this dress code? And they said, oh, well, last semester the kids had a protest and the administration kind of laid over and, took away the dress code. And I said, what do you mean took away the dress code? They said, oh, they can wear whatever they want. So I had girls coming into class with wearing just sports bras. And when it would get hot, the boys would take off their shirts. We couldn't do anything. One of the teachers said, what if I have a girl show up to class in a towel? The administration told him, look the other direction. And so we were being thrown in there with no administrative support. So now it's more of, instead of it's, the school, the parents, and the student working together, it feels like everybody's working against each other. So, I've been in student teaching for a few days, and I get on the phone and I call up Katie, and I said, Katie, I don't know if I want to be a teacher anymore. I said, I'm worried that I'm going to get fired because I'm standing up for what I feel is right morally. I don't want to do this. And, she talked me off the ledge. I said, well, you got to get me out of this school I'm at right now. I said, I don't feel comfortable and I don't feel safe here. And so, luckily the college was able to find another school for me to go to. This other school, very different. It was a middle school this time, and the parent involvement was actually there. And, the school had some kind of structure to it. For one thing, the students had to dress out for PE. If they didn't have their uniform, they had to get loaners. So we were running, we were totally taking out that option. The kids had to be in class. So I actually had all my students there every day. It was awesome. And I was finding that, the master teacher that I had there had given the expectations beforehand. And so he set up, he set the foundation for people to have to participate. And he would call the parents if he had problems with the students. So he had a lot more parent involvement. I was like, this is awesome. I would actually have someone that I can learn from here. But then I started to learn that parent involvement wasn't always positive. They don't need to just be involved. They need to be working with us, because this was back when we still had mask mandates. And the PTA started a protest against the mask mandate. We had PTA members standing outside the school with signs and telling the kids, don't wear your masks. And so now we're being told you have to enforce this. And the parents are saying, oh no, don't listen to them. So we had 30 to 40 students decide they weren't going to wear masks. And so we just put them in a classroom, and we had a teacher monitor them, and we received an email. Nothing bad is to happen to these students. Like, no grades are to be affected. No repercussions are going to happen. They were making a protest. And so then we had to still enforce the mask mandate and offer masks to the students. And if they said no, well, then we couldn't do anything about it. We just had to ask them to stand outside the classroom. I had a student, I offered him a mask. I said, hey, if you're going to be inside, I'm going to need you to wear this. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, well, then I'm sorry, I understand your position, but if you're not going to wear the mask, I need you to stand outside the door and watch from from outside. He said, I'm not going to do that either. And I turned to my master teacher. I said, so what do I do now? What can I do? And so we called campus security. Campus security came, took the kid to the office. 5 minutes later, the kid comes back, sits down at his desk without his mask, and nothing has happened. The administration wasn't supporting us. So So we were starting to, get frustrated with this whole mask mandate because nobody was able to do anything to stop the kids. They knew this, and so they took advantage of it. We'd have, other systems in place where we had to support the student in whatever decisions that they made for themselves. We have students that would want to be called by other names besides what their name was on the roll sheet, and we had to accommodate. And in most situations, this was fine. But we had a student one time, she wanted to be called something different, and it was like a different word, like flip, not even a name, just flip. Okay, so all right, flip, we'll call you Flip. But then she was starting to struggle in school, and people were picking on her. So her mom was wondering what was going on. So her mom said, I want to come in and shadow my daughter one day in her school. And when the mom came, the school said, while her mother's here, we have to call her by her real name. We have to call her by the name they call her at home. You are not to tell her mother about any of her decisions as far as like wanting to be something else. You have to keep that secret for the student. And we're saying, wait a minute, we want to have open communication between the school and the family and the student, but we're going to keep secrets for the student from the family. This is a 13-year-old girl. She's not old enough to make these decisions yet. She's not a legal adult. So we had to keep this secret. And the mother was none the wiser. Then I went to my master teacher. I said, I don't agree with any of that. We can't be keeping secrets from the families. And he said, well, back when I was younger, I had a student that wanted to be a different gender. Now, I'm not saying any political way, whether it's right or wrong, but this girl wanted to be considered a boy. And so she was going to change in the boys' locker room. And the boys, if they were uncomfortable, could go somewhere else to change. But she was going to have access to change in the boys' locker room. His job was to monitor this girl changing. And he went to the administration. He said, are you telling me my job is to watch a teenage girl change clothes? They said, yes, you have to monitor her, him now, in case, something, an issue arises in the locker room. He said, this is all kinds of wrong. I could, any other circumstance, I'm going to jail for this. So now we have the students' choices, that could endanger the teachers. So what I'm trying to say is we need to start holding people accountable, like mostly the students, holding them accountable, because if they're going to make these decisions, we have to let them know what the repercussions could be, not just for them, but for the people around them, for the teachers, and say, hey, you know what, we understand you want this, but do you know how it's going to affect that teacher? That could, end his career if, anybody takes this the wrong way. So, I've made it through the semester now, and it wasn't all bad. Okay, I know I've talked about a lot of these, downsides, down points, but it wasn't all bad. I was able to build relationships with the students and, get to know about their families and, learn about their family dynamics and talk to a lot of the parents. I had, parents stop and say, hey, you're that student teacher for, Coach Stone. So I said, yeah, I am. Well, my daughter, she really appreciated this and that. So I also noticed that with the different schools I was at, the classrooms, like, I'm sorry, how do I want to put this? When I was substituting before I student taught, I was in Texas, and the classrooms were so much different. The students listened. They all sat in their desks. They actually did their work. And I'm not trying to say Texas schools are better than California schools, but I noticed that the culture made all the difference in the world. The culture, that we're creating in these classrooms has to accommodate learning. When I was interviewing for the job I just got for next school year, it was at a private school because I am now pretty afraid of the public school system. So I went to this private school and I told the principal, my main concern is administration backing up the teachers. I need administrative support. And he said, oh yes, we are able to support our teachers because we have a little more leverage in the private system because our students are paying to be here. So, we could always ask them not to be here anymore. I said, now that feels great. That feels wonderful to me, but it shouldn't be just in a private setting. The public school, teachers deserve to have the support that the private school teachers are getting. And I'm not saying I know the solution to it, but I think a lot of it begins with accountability between the schools, accountability from the teachers, accountability from the families, and accountability from the kids. I started off in the beginning talking about, I was able to walk into a campus. I could have been anybody. I could have been there to do horrible things. And the people at the front weren't being accountable. They were being lackadaisical, So that's kind of what I got today. Sorry if it sounded like a lot of rambling, but yeah, Katie, if you want to come back, you certainly can.
Damn, you're awesome. And it's not rambling. This is the why behind the what. This is the behind the scenes stuff, you guys. We are losing good teachers, good student teachers, because they are afraid. So we're going to wrap this up pretty quickly. How are we going to support? This has to be talked about. Look at who our students are and where they're at. Recognize their strengths and help them grow. If they like dinosaurs, get them into dinosaurs. Get them into museums and learning. Meet them where they are at and their needs and lift them up. Foster their passions. If your child has an interest in science and space, go right to the source. As parents, we need to go right to the source. Now, how can we help? Fixed versus growth mindset. Expose them to their potential and foster development. Not just education and tests, but impart systems of thinking. Where is their drive? Are they truly behind, or are they finally not being pushed so far ahead because of COVID? We cannot ever succeed unless you failed. Hear that, everyone. You cannot fully succeed unless you failed. There's no measurement for success unless you have actually failed yourself. So we need to get to know the families. We need to have family engagement. We need to have more positive relationships. We need to have meaningful, involved families. So one thing, parent education workshops. If your parents don't understand a certain language, get them support, get them translators, classroom participation, home visits. You ever hear a parent say, my child would never? Come on into the classroom and see that child nevering like they never before. Enrichment activities. How do you help the families? I'll leave us kind of with this, you guys. Survey tools, family school relationships, readiness checks, communication, phone calls, text messages, emails. There's a system called Classing, which is more secure social media platforms. Increased family engagement with QR codes. Class Dojo. Use at-home learning activities. There's so many resources. We're in such a great use of digital age. Books. What's my superpower? Different, a great thing to be. Me and mama, what makes a family? Keep learning at home. There's a lot of things other than a tablet to play video games. So this is some of my links, and I'll leave this up for a second, and I'll definitely let you guys have whatever, but I want to leave you with food for thought. Everyone wants to be accepted, admired. Success is different for each person. For me, success means drive, passion for my job, my life, money, but sometimes success means religion, family, being powerful, becoming a celebrity. What you think success is could be someone else's need for success. Healthy versus unhealthy siblings. I strive every day to be what I think my little brothers need. I might be a grown adult and they might be grown men, but I always want to set the tone as their older sibling. And my little brother said, for him, he learned from the failures around him. He took what he saw other people doing, and whether they succeeded or failed, they went through, and he learned from that. He has great friends around him. His standard of living he wanted, he followed through with. But a good family, morals, values, examples, that's the core. Good people come from bad families, and bad children come from good families. So it's not a one size fits all. But I will leave you with this last piece of advice. Now, I'm the only girl in my direct family, but my dad treated myself and my brothers the same. We learned about cars. He taught us about cooking. He taught us about cleaning. He taught us about sewing, him and my mom. There was not what you would consider gender roles in our house. We were all held accountable. We were all held accountable for learning everything. Because my dad always said in our house, if I treat my daughter like a second-class citizen compared to her brothers, then how would I expect the world to treat her any different and her to know how to succeed? So I am extremely blessed that everyone in my circle, whether it be my student teachers, my amazing Dr. Shipley experience, my wonderful and amazing managers, and everyone that I've had that has fostered. I've had great teachers and I've had bad ones, but who I am truly as a person is the whole entire village that I had. So I'll leave you with any questions. I know we need to wrap up. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments? I know we threw a lot at you in such a short period of time, but anything else you'd like to know or have any questions for Samurai?